Have you ever had an experience that you thought was going to be amazing and turned out to be an absolute disaster? That could be anything from a relationship to a job to a holiday to buying a new car, whatever it is. We've all had those experiences where you're completely massively let down. Now, mine here in relation to music is I will never work in a massive recording studio ever again. And the reason for that is I'm going to tell you now. Way back in the year 2000, so 25 years ago, it would have been around June, maybe May, June at the time. So almost summer of 2000, I was on the par to release my second single, which was, a cover version of Massive Attack's Unfinished Sympathy. And we're doing this track. Me and my friend had co-produced it together, and we needed a vocalist. So we got Angie Brown in from Bizarre Inc., famous Bizarre Inc., who'd already had success in the charts. She'd already done well. She'd already had top hits. So she knew what she was doing. She was brilliant. Wonderful woman. Great person. Great singer. And we brought her up to Derby to do the vocals from London. And we got the vocals down, and they were good, but we couldn't quite get the mix right of this track. So we're like, right, okay, so we did a good demo. My manager at the time, in his infinite wisdom, decided to book us into a proper recording studio in London. And this studio is world famous. Everybody's recorded there, from Oasis to Led Zeppelin to U2, you name it. Anyone who's anybody back in the day have been there. And it's called Olympic Studios in London. And it was a massive, massive 48 track channel desk, bound in leather, big, massive glass windows, and into the recording booths where there was acoustic paneling on the walls, and there's a grand piano, and there's all these little vocal booths and orchestra section. It was absolutely immense. It was immense. And to the left, you had the multi-track tapes machines. It was like the state of the art of the time. And then on the right, there was this games room with a pool table in and all that nonsense. And we got booked in by my manager at the time, and he also booked an engineer, this mix engineer guy he knew, who had worked, if memory serves me correctly, had worked on the latest Gabrielle record, which was, she was a British pop star for those who don't know who she is. Anyway, she was a successful star in the 90s, and he'd recorded or mixed her album at the time or whatever, and I was next on his list to do. He was a mate of my manager's, so, I had every faith that he would be amazing. Anyway, it turns out he was a bit of a pothead, a bit of a wreckhead. He turns up and he was sat there at the desk, and he was probably about 30 odd, I would say. He was probably in his 30s. I was like in my early 20s. And he'd sat there with this like a credit card shaped thing with a little filter on it, and it was like a pipe. And he's smoking away on this pipe. And I'm like, hold on a minute, it's getting wrecked. It's like 10 in the morning, and this guy's getting stoned. I'm like, I'm paying you money here. What's going on? But because I was the rookie, he was the professional. I didn't quite have that confidence in the voice to say, "Oh, what a minute, mate, put your stuff away. We've got work to do." And also at the time, I didn't realise that. Well, I did and I didn't. That I'm paying for this. At the time, the label are taking care of it. Oh, don't worry about it. Olympic Studios will bill the label. Don't worry, they'll take care of it. When in actual fact, when you realise it's actually me who's taking care of it, and I'm the one paying for this. So anyway, at the time I wasn't completely tuned into all that stuff. Do you know what I mean? I just was so focused on getting this record done. So anyway, we goes there. I take my PC with the arrangement on and a couple of keyboards with some of the sounds on. We rig that up. We set it all up. We get it going through this desk, and we've got Angie in the vocal booth doing her vocals. And the pressure was on, and we'd spent hours getting it all ready, and we couldn't sync my computer to the desk. It was a mess. We managed to do it in the end. Anyway, Angie's in there doing her vocals, and she has a moment where she's getting frustrated, and she gets into a bit of a, upset state, and so we had to take a break. She says, "Look, just let's stop for a bit." Anyway, cut to the chase. This guy's still smoking around his pipe, and I'm like, I'm not happy with him at all. But what did I know? I was the young boy. So anyway, we get this demo done. Angie does the vocals. She goes home. Blah blah blah. We spend hours and hours mixing it down in there. Well, he does. And I was getting really bored and restless. And in this studio, and the problem with these big studios is I'm going to sound like a hypocrite now. Is that they're dark and they've got no natural light. And if you look around me now, it looks like I'm in a darkened studio. I'm not. I'm at my home studio. It's night time as we speak, and the curtains are drawn, and it's winter. So that's why it's dark in here. And the reason why I'll never work in one of those studios again is because you go underground and you've got no natural daylight whatsoever. There's none, and you're under there for hours. And you can understand why bands fall out in these situations, because the cabin fever must send you mad, and if you spend time with rock and roll stars that are falling out, you can see why they fall out. So anyway, this place is, costing me a lot of money. I think it cost me two and a half, $3,000 for that day alone. It was ridiculous with the engineer, who was completely stoned. So anyway, we're recording this mix, getting it all down. He's tweaking and messing about with all the dials, and this is a proper, hardware studio. There's no PCs as such, with VSTs on. Them days are still way early. It's all hardware. Anyway, so we're mixing this track down, and we get back home. Cut a long story short, we get home. Week later, the DAT arrives, and I've still got the actual DAT tape here. Look, this is it. Progress, Unfinished Sympathy. And it says the master, instrumental, left vocal with effects, strings, master, but no vocal, no left vocal, blah, blah, blah. There's all these different versions on it. Anyway, we get it back. And at the time, in the year 2000, my ears were still relatively untrained. I didn't know anything about compressions and, detailed EQ and all these kind of mixing techniques. I wasn't aware. I wasn't into all that at the time. And even I knew then that this was a pile of crap. We put it on in the studio, which was a good studio. It had NS10s. It had all the mod cons of the time. And we put it on. And it was like, whoa, blumping neck. The string pounds at you from this side. The vocal hits you like this. And the drums hit you. And it's like, God, this is an absolute mess. It was a complete shambles. The guy who mixed it obviously mixed it when he was stoned. It was just a disaster. It was awful. It was just, I was so disappointed. I was so gutted. And I was expecting this amazing final product, which, as you would do if you're spending that kind of money in a studio such as Olympic. But then I came away from it and I realised that, yes, Oasis had recorded there, Led Zeppelin, The Who, whoever it was. And it was a band studio. It was an orchestra studio. It was a live rock and roll studio. It wasn't a studio for house music and that kind of production, trance music or whatever at the time. It wasn't that kind of place. It was the completely wrong place to have done this mix and this vocal. We should have hired a much smaller studio with a much more in tuned dance music engineer. We knew many of them, and my manager never chose to get one. He just got this buffoon in who was absolutely wrecked. So God knows how at the time it all came together on that DAT, because quite frankly I could have done better in hindsight in my own studio anyway. It was like, we spent all this money to come here, and I've got this, which was no better, if not worse, than what I'd come up with initially. So anyway, we ended up finally mixing it back at our own studio anyway. So it was a complete false economy, a complete waste of time, complete waste of money, and it was just, I would never do that again. And as I say, I sat in a darkened room now. My studio looks like a darkened room, but it's not. I usually record in the daylight. I've got, natural plants around me and things like that. And the problem with those studios is that you go into it and it's like going into a spaceship, and you go down into the cellar and there's no daylight. It's just like a really moody vibe, and there's no stuff around you to get inspiration from. Like, I've got all my records, I've got my studio equipment, and my I've got things I can vibe off here when I'm at home, and in those places you're just in there with the desk and the instruments, and that's it. There's nothing in there to give you any inspiration. So yeah, that's one of the reasons, probably the main reason, why I'll never work in one of those kind of studios again. And I've not had the opportunity, to be fair, because I've not made the opportunity to make it happen. But what I'm trying to get you to take away from this is, don't ever let anybody dictate or, sabotage is a strong word, but take over the process of your recording. So if you've got somebody that you're working with and they know somebody who's an engineer, for example, a mix engineer, but you don't know him and you've not heard his work, don't let them decide that person's going to be using. Don't take recommendations from somebody who doesn't record, because my manager, as good as he was at his job, he wasn't a musician, he wasn't a recording artist, he wasn't even a DJ. He didn't have a musical ear in that sense. So he brings in an engineer that had done Gabrielle, who was kind of pop R&B, to make house, and it was kind of like, it's like asking me to drum on a Slipknot record. It's not going to happen, is it? So it was like, don't let anybody kind of dictate your, your production mindset. Your vision for what you're having, you have in your head. And don't go waste a load of money, basically. And also, as I say, make sure that your studio has got stuff in it that's, because a lot of us will work in rooms like this, which are, it is darkened and that, but most of you are probably at home. You've got a studio in your loft or in your bedroom, whatever. Make sure you've got stuff around you that gives you energy and gives you vibes, like plants and records, your DJ stuff, whatever. Don't go into a studio and think you're going to get an amazing product, because 9 times out of 10 you might not. So that's all I wanted to say, really, was my bad experience of a major recording studio that cost me an awful lot of money, and I came out with a DAT tape that wasn't worth the cassette it's printed on. So that was it. That was another one of my expeditions, one of my escapades back in the day. And that's it. So thank you for watching, and don't let anything negative take over your project. If you've got a vision for it, you stick with that vision and you make those mistakes yourself. Don't allow someone else to make a mistake that's going to cost you. I suppose that's what I want you to take away from this, really. And make sure you got some plants in your studio and some vibe. Thank you, guys, and I'll see you soon.